I've always been the youngest, the quiet one. Never the golden child, but never the screw-up either. Just the dependable one. The one who showed up, paid the bills, and didn't make a fuss. Marriage, I used to believe, was built on loyalty, not passion, not grand gestures, just showing up every damn day and choosing each other. I thought that was enough. I thought being steady mattered. So when Madeline, my wife, CEO, force of nature and all that, suggested a private family dinner, I didn't question it. She said it was to reconnect. Just us. No assistants, no PR teams, no distractions. I should have known something was off. There was a weird tightness in her voice, like a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. But I went along with it, because that's what I do. I go along. I hold things together. I got there early. I always do. Wore a navy suit she once said made me look reliable. Parked just across from the restaurant, and that's when I saw it. A sleek black Porsche. Didn't recognize it. Plates weren't local. That detail stuck with me. I stepped into the private dining room we'd reserved. White tablecloths, candles. The kind of room you book when you want to celebrate something, or hide something. She was already inside, Madeline, laughing. Not just a polite laugh either. It was the kind of laugh she hadn't let out with me in years. And the guy next to her? Couldn't have been older than 30. Hair slicked back, tailored blazer, smug as hell. She stiffened when she saw me, like a child caught red-handed. Then she recovered. Fast. "Oh, honey, you're early. This is Logan. He's been helping me with the new strategy rollout." Logan stood up, extended a hand. "Business advisor," he added, as if reading from a rehearsed line. I shook it, firmly, politely. My gut twisted. The rest of the family filed in. Her sister, her brother-in-law, a couple of her board members who'd somehow become family over the years. Nobody blinked twice at Logan, like he'd always been there. I sat down at the head of the table, my usual spot. But tonight, it felt like I was crashing someone else's party. Dinner started off normal, surface-level chit-chat. Then Logan called her Mads. That used to be my nickname for her. She smiled at him, too easily. I cleared my throat. "So, Logan, been working with Madeline long?" He grinned. 6 months. Feels longer, though. We click, you know." I looked at her. She didn't look away, just sipped her wine. "Mads?" I repeated carefully. "Didn't know you liked being called that anymore." She waved it off. "Don't be so sensitive. You always get weird about the small stuff." Small stuff. I paid for this dinner. Every plate, every glass of overpriced wine. But somehow, I was the outsider at my own table. Then came the toast. Ed Madeline stood, glass raised. "To the team and to Logan for reminding me what it feels like to be alive again." People laughed. Even her sister clapped. Alive again. Since when had she been dead? Someone muttered, "Guess fresh blood does wonders." I looked around. My mouth was dry. My hands clenched under the table. Then she dropped the bomb. "We're streamlining the legacy portfolio," she said. "Cutting outdated projects. Going leaner." My project. The community initiative I'd spent years building from the ground up. No one looked at me. No one asked for my input. Just applause. Like I wasn't even there. I couldn't breathe. Every clap felt like a slap. After dessert, I excused myself. Waited outside until she followed. She looked annoyed. "What now?" she asked. I tried to keep my voice steady. "Is there something I should know?" She rolled her eyes. "Don't ruin this night. Not everything is about you." "I'm your husband," I said quietly. "For now," she replied, turning back inside. I reached for her hand. She pulled away, right there in the hallway, with waitstaff watching. Something cracked inside me, quietly, like a pipe bursting somewhere deep under concrete. I didn't follow her back in. I couldn't. Later, as I walked to my car, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. The message read, "She's not who you think she is. If you want proof, meet me tomorrow at 11, alone." I looked back at the window. She was laughing again. The same laugh from earlier, light, careless, like none of this mattered. I barely slept. My body gave up on rest before the sun even bothered to rise. I laid there, staring at the ceiling like it might spell out some reason. The text, just 10 words, kept playing in my head like a broken loop. "She's not who you think she is. Meet me, alone." I should have deleted it, should have rolled over and let it go, but I couldn't. Not after the way she looked at me last night, like I was a guest overstaying my welcome in a house I built. Delphine hadn't just been cold. She flinched when I touched her. Not from anger, not from shame, from guilt. That's something you can't fake. By 10:30 a.m., I was sitting in a booth at a corner cafe downtown. Small place, nothing flashy. I chose a seat facing the entrance, back to the wall. That old instinct kicked in. Watch all exits. Never let anyone sneak up on you. Maybe that came from years of being too trusting. At 11:01, she walked in. Sharp gray suit, no smile, eyes like someone who'd seen too much too soon. She didn't introduce herself, just slid into the booth across from me and placed a small envelope on the table. "I don't have much time," she said. "But you need to know." I nodded. "Start talking." "Name's not important. I worked for Delphine. I was her executive assistant for 3 years. She fired me 6 months ago." "Why?" "Because I stopped ignoring things." She opened the envelope and laid out a few printed screenshots. My heart stalled. There was Logan, her advisor, logging into an admin panel I recognized. It was our back-end dashboard, not hers. Hours, files, funds, client notes. He had access to everything. "She gave him your logins," the woman said flatly, "and access to your shared accounts." I didn't speak. She reached into her blazer, slid a USB drive across the table. I copied what I could before she wiped my access. Transfers, emails, strategy notes. What is she doing? "She's building something behind your back. And she's using what you built to do it." The woman stood. No coffee, no pleasantries, just a nod and a warning. "You didn't hear this from me." By noon, I was holed up in my co-working office, the only place still untouched by her shadow. I plugged in the USB and clicked through folders labeled with cold efficiency. Phase 2, Fund Moves, Team Realign. One folder was just named Exit. She wasn't planning to leave quietly. She was planning to erase me. Fund transfers from our shared holding account, slow trickles into an LLC tied to Logan's name, memos where she mocked me to board members. Rourke lacks vision. He's reliable, but uninspired. My hands curled into fists. Another doc. Rebranding slides. New logos. New voice. My name scrubbed from every tagline, every mission statement. The legacy pivot, she called it. Legacy meant me. Pivot meant without me. I started speaking into my recorder. "This isn't about another man, it's about betrayal. This isn't just infidelity, it's erasure." My voice was steady, too steady. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and there she was, young Delphine. Back when we still used the garage as our sewing room. The two of us, tired but laughing, covered in fabric dust. I remembered one night, 3 a.m., and she was breaking down over a supplier delay. I sat up all night sewing tags by hand. Told her she could sleep. She didn't sleep. She watched me. Back then, I wasn't just her husband. I was her foundation. And now I was excess weight. Sometimes being the quiet one lets them believe you'll never speak. That's where they mess up. I called Gannon. My son picked up on the third ring. "Hey, Dad." "Hey, quick one. Your mom mentioned a new rollout, something she's been working on." There was a pause. "She did," he said carefully. "I'm not really involved, but yeah, something big." "You sure you're not involved?" I said I'm not, okay? Click. That pause said more than the words did. He knew something, and he was choosing her. The fracture wasn't just between me and Delphine, it was cutting through my bloodline. I stood, opened a clean folder on my desktop and labeled it Phase 1. No confrontation. Not yet. I dialed 3 numbers. One to a forensic accountant I trusted, one to a strategist who owed me, one to a lawyer who didn't blink at messes like this. You can't win with fire when you're fighting someone who feeds on smoke. I needed clarity. I needed a plan. At 4:12 p.m., a ping lit up my screen. New email, confidential, from her office. I clicked. It was a board agenda, full vote scheduled. Topic, restructure. Below that, transitioning legacy leadership. I scrolled. My name wasn't there, They weren't just replacing me emotionally, they were erasing me financially too. I got home late that night, close to midnight. The house was quiet, too quiet. Delphine's car wasn't in the driveway, and when I stepped inside, the only light on was the one over the kitchen sink. Gannon's door was shut, no sounds coming from his room. I didn't bother knocking. I went to the bathroom to wash up. That's when I saw it. Her wedding ring, sitting on the counter like it meant nothing. No note, no explanation. Just left there. Like a receipt for everything she'd taken and decided she didn't need anymore. I stared at it for a long time. Didn't touch it. There's a point where a symbol stops meaning something. That ring. Once it stood for loyalty. For us against the world. Now it just reminded me how long I'd been playing a part in a story someone else had already finished writing. I tried to sleep. Didn't work. My mind kept replaying the last 3 days like a courtroom drama with no verdict. The dinner, the message, the files. Her voice calm as ever, whispering poison dressed as progress. At 2 a.m., I opened my laptop, tapped into the back end of our company's partner registry. It wasn't hard. I'd built most of the infrastructure myself years ago. She probably forgot I even had access. There it was, an unfamiliar LLC listed under Strategic Growth Partnerships. I cross-referenced the tax ID. The name hit me like a fist to the chest. Vincent Brome, a shark in our world, famous for swallowing mid-sized companies and spitting out the founders, hostile takeovers, asset stripping, boardroom coups. If he was involved, this wasn't just Delphine going rogue emotionally. This was a war plan. She was preparing a clean break, not just from me, from the company, from the version of herself that included me. That kind of betrayal doesn't cry, doesn't scream. It calculates. By the time the sun came up, I'd made coffee, poured it, didn't drink it, just sat at the kitchen table waiting. Gannon wandered in around 8:30. Pajamas, phone in hand, barely looked up. I watched him scroll, blink, scroll again. "You sleep okay?" I asked. "Fine," he mumbled. I tried to keep it light. "You hear anything about the new rollout at your mom's company?" He paused, just for a second too long, then shrugged. "She's working on stuff. It's different now, Dad. Things change." "Change how?" "I don't know. You wouldn't get it." I nodded, pretending I didn't feel that sentence like a blade under my ribs. The kid I'd taught how to ride a bike, how to shake a man's hand. Now he looked at me like I was yesterday's headline. "What do you do when even your own son stops seeing you?" By late morning, I drove across town. I wasn't scheduled to be at Delphine's office. I wasn't expected. That was the point. The receptionist, a girl I didn't recognize, froze when she saw me. "Mrs. Brome's in a meeting." "Good," I said. "I'll wait." I didn't wait. I walked past her desk, straight down the hall toward the corner suite. Her door was closed, but it wasn't soundproof. Laughter, a man's voice, hers. I stepped up to the frosted glass and looked through the edge. There they were, Delphine and Logan, side by side, reviewing mock-ups on a large monitor. I scanned the printouts pinned behind them. A new slogan jumped out, "A future redefined without boundaries." There was no mention of me, no photo, no nod to the past. It was like I'd never existed. I knocked. She opened the door and blinked like she'd seen a ghost. "We need to talk," I said. She stepped into the hallway, closed the door behind her. "I know about Vincent," I said quietly, "and I know about the transfers." She didn't flinch. She didn't lie. "You were the past, Rourke. This company can't afford to move slow anymore. It needs speed, not sentiment." She turned and walked back in. Just like that. That silence hit harder than any shouting match could have. Sometimes betrayal isn't a knife. It's a quiet nod, a closed door, a meeting you're not invited to. I walked out of the building, feeling weightless and heavy all at once. Drove without a destination, just kept turning where the road let me. An hour later, I found myself parked in front of the old tailor shop, the place where we started. The lights were off, dust in the windows, a for lease sign peeling in the corner. She used to sketch her first designs on napkins in that place, would ask me what I thought even when she already knew. We were partners then. At least I thought we were. She's been rewriting the story while I was still reading the last chapter. I stared at my phone, typed a message to someone I hadn't spoken to in years. A friend, a man who once helped me build this thing. The reply came fast. I've seen the paperwork. She's moving to freeze you out completely by next quarter. I looked down at the ring, still in my cup holder. Still sitting there like it hadn't been stripped of everything it used to mean. If they think I'll go quietly, they've never really known me. I read that magazine article in the cafe earlier, how women leaders are rising alone. Her face on the cover, bold, articles about Delphine standing alone, stepping into greatness. These stories never mentioned me. Never said who cut the corners, who held her up when no one else believed. That used to hurt. Now it unsettles me because trust used to mean something. Now it feels like a liability. That night, late after everyone else was asleep, I checked my email in the study. The legal department had forwarded something accidentally, an attached contract. I hesitated, looked around as if someone might see me. The contract named Delphine, a new investor entity, a shell company. It transferred my leadership responsibilities, projects I'd started, designs I owned, in part to Logan's company. The document was signed 2 months ago with clauses that made the move irreversible, irrevocable. I swallowed hard. Betrayal turned from emotional sting to existential threat. This wasn't just a mission. It was erasure. I thought about every trademark I registered, every proposal I ghosted late into the night, every sketch I made while she slept beside me. All those hours I believed we were building something together. But she had been quietly building something without me. I gathered old drafts comparing watermarks and logos, my name absent where it belonged. She used my efforts to polish her image. That realization burned. Next day, I requested an emergency board meeting. The room was cold. Delphine's staff murmured. She tried to explain their strategic realignment, new leadership models, true business jargon. But when I laid out the contract, the irrevocable clauses, and showed past versions of our work that bore my signature, silence spread among the board. Some members shifted in their seats, glancing at each other. Others avoided eye contact. I demanded the contract be voided, demanded respect. It was my voice, once muted, speaking back. Later, when I thought it was safe, a message appeared in my inbox. You have 24 hours to drop this or we'll take everything you think you own. For a moment, I froze. It never used to scare me. But fear smells a lot like opportunity. I weighed the cost. My reputation, my son, my peace. Then cold fury steeled my spine. I wasn't protecting just what was mine. I was protecting who I was. In response, I contacted a forensic accountant I trusted, pulled together financial statements, deeds, internal memos, photos of early work. I reached out to a former client who still used my name in contracts. I asked employees, quietly, to recall the drafts with my watermark designs. I assembled a timeline, grainy emails, meeting notes, sketches, all lined up like dominoes leading to the moment she cast me aside. Around midnight, a soft knock at the front door. No package, just a small envelope. Inside, a note in familiar handwriting. Leave it all behind or I will. I clutched that note, looked at the files piled on my desk, contracts, photos, old sketches. They were my history, my identity. I slid everything into a drawer, locked it, and sat still, breathing. Something inside me shifted. Silence isn't an option anymore. I sat in the law office waiting room, hands folded, heart pounding. The threat, 2 sentences in black and white, haunted me. Leave it all behind, or I will. I stared at the polished wood walls, pretending calm. Lawyer's office number flicked on the wall clock, mid-afternoon. I reminded myself I built this company, this reputation. I'm not the kind to be erased. When I finally leaned back in the lawyer's chair, voice calm, I said, "What's next?" He warned me without raising his voice. "If you proceed, they'll hit back harder. More than legal fees, more than reputation." He tapped a file. I nodded. I'm not backing down from something I helped build. That was the moment silence lost its appeal. I chose quiet planning over loud surrender. The gears were turning. I dug through old email chains, contracts, design drafts. Discovered, hidden in dusty archives, that 75% of legacy design copyrights still belong to me. Delphine had never registered her rebranding claims with the U.S. Patent Office properly. That oversight was my wedge. I filed a temporary injunction at dusk, completely under the radar, no press release, no notifications. I whispered to myself, I won't yell. I'll just lock the doors before they realize they're trapped inside. Dinner at Delphine's house later that evening, on her terms. I accepted, thinking it might calm the fires. When I stepped through the front door, I saw Logan holding a glass of wine, leaning into her voice. She smiled when I walked in, like I was expected. Let's be civil. We all want what's best, she said, voice soft. I looked down at the table, velvet tablecloth, candles, fine china. She meant ruin, masked as peace. I slid the injunction across the table. Fork clattered on plate. Her smile flickered. Logan tensed. She spoke carefully. Legal jargon, blame shifting, saying modernization requires sacrifice. I countered, naming clauses, calling out documents, dates, lawyers. I revealed connections with loyal board members and vendors who still honored my original work. I didn't shout. I spoke slow, precise. Her mask cracked. Later, home was dreary. Gannon texted me. Was that necessary? I watched the screen. I thought, yes, son, because silence would cost more than conflict. I journaled. A war like this doesn't end in court. It ends when they realize you've already taken back the power. Phase 2 wasn't just legal. It was moral. By midnight, phone buzzed, company alert. Internal restructuring delaying fall collection, it said. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Then ring. Unknown number. You really think you're the only one with secrets? A voice said. I stood there clutching my coffee mug, anger and clarity burning together. I realized then, I wasn't simply fighting for credit. I was fighting for reality. I pulled into the parking garage of the corporate headquarters just after dusk, a heavy folder of evidence on the passenger seat, heart beating to a rhythm I couldn't quiet. The building loomed, glass, light, cold corridors. I pressed my palm flat against the folder, thinking about every time I carried something like this into a boardroom, every time I held my breath, hoping someone would see what I built. Inside, the lobby was deserted. Elevators dinged. I climbed to the boardroom floor. As I passed Chief Strategist Joran Cade on a polished nameplate where my name used to be, something inside me flared. That plate wasn't decoration. It was a declaration. Erase the past, seize the future. My past, my identity, being scrubbed clean. The boardroom was half full when I walked in. Delphine at the head, serene. Logan next to her, arms folded. Trustees whispering. I stood and asked for the floor under our bylaws. It felt like drawing a line in shifting sand. I presented every document, contract reassigning my leadership, patent registrations with my name, early drafts of signature designs. I unlocked the evidence, screenshots, watermarked files, board emails that played back like betrayal. Delphine tried to interrupt. She said she was modernizing, adapting. I laid out how the shell company was using my designs without credit, how the rebranding had entirely excised my name. Logan squirmed. A trustee's face fell. I looked at them all. You built it with my hands. You rewrote it without my name. The words slid into silence. Leaving the meeting, I felt every whisper behind me. Cameras, phones. Someone recorded the meeting, someone always did. A board member I trusted avoided my stare, walked on. Outside, my car mirror was smashed. A message scratched in paint across the windshield. Stay out of what's hers. No signature, just threat. At home later, I shut the study door. Spread the trophies of my past, sketches, blueprints, invoices, all lined up. I remembered a quote I once heard. The only way to deal with betrayal is with proof. I laid out every piece of proof I had, but also considered the cost. Gannon's future, my reputation, the risk when truth becomes loud. I thought, I will expose, but I'll do it with integrity. Anxiety gnawed at me, but anger steadied me. I made phone calls to a journalist, a vendor, an old client who'd used my name. I patched together testimony. I chronologized every moment when identity was torn quietly from me. And then, When the night was thick, I checked my email. Subject line, decision required. Draft of share reduction. I opened it. They proposed shifting 25% of what remains under my ownership, if I agree to stay silent. No public fight, no court filing, quiet compliance. I closed the computer, scanned the room, files, photos, awards. They weren't just things. They were proof that I existed in this story. I won't be silent anymore. I walked into Mayella Finch's podcast studio that evening tighter than a cord ready to snap. Under stage lights, the room smelled of polished wood and new mics. Backstage, Delphine's PR team buzzed like flies. Reporters fiddled with cameras. I touched the sketchbook Gannon once left behind in my study, his drawings of buildings we designed together. He used pencil then. They still bore my name in his scrawl. If I fail tonight, I lose more than business. I lose honesty. Mayella introduced me plainly. Tonight, we honor legacy, transparency, and truth. Not as Delphine's husband, not as former partner, but as someone forced into silence. When I spoke, I told about the nights I stayed up refining blueprints, the emails I signed, the proposals late into winter, the designs she used without credit. I held the sketchbook in my hands, pages curled, drawings faded. I read passages aloud, Gannon sketches, early logos, notes she edited out. The audience could hear it. Logos that looked like mine, then changed. Rough pencil sketches next to polished brand images with my name missing. Mayella asked, "Can someone rewrite history while others are still living it?" I said, "History isn't rewritten, it's revealed." When the live episode aired, it was louder than I expected. Social media lit up. Clips of my voice, sketches, old emails contrasted sharply with polished press photos of Delphine alone. A board member posted, "Rourke built what you call brand alone." Delphine's partner stayed quiet. PR tried to shift blame. Creative evolution. Honoring new voices. But people reached out. Vendors, clients, followers. Shock. Support. Doubt about what Delphine had told them. Shame that I kept quiet so long. Yet something fierce in me found strength in the exposure. Afterwards, in the reception hall, I saw Gannon. He held the sketchbook in his arms, eyes wide. "Dad," he said softly. I drew it. He'd drawn our company entrance, the old sign, including my name, bold. I stood frozen, tears stung, but I held them back. Recognition that my worth was always there, erased in public but never in memory. I thought of that saying, "The truth will set you free, but first it will make you miserable." I felt miserable, but finally free enough to know I won't hide. Delphine released a statement, not apology, just transformation. "My success is individual vision," she declared, but her words landed soft where my proof had hit hard. I shared images, old photos, patent numbers, all tied to my name. Legal filings followed, property rights, design credits, contractual acknowledgments. The public conversation shifted. People whispered, "Who truly built this?" Reputation, hers polished, mine under dust, now being cleaned. At home, Gannon and I sat with old portfolios, notebook pages, sketchbooks. He said, "You taught me to build with heart." I told him, "We'll build new things together, not erase the old." I sketched ideas in his notebook. A center to mentor young designers who are used, overlooked, erased. I reflected, being right doesn't always feel satisfying unless it helps someone else. I made a vow. Silence won't be my weapon again. Late that night, someone dropped a package at my doorstep. Inside, a leather notebook, my handwriting across a decade-old cover, Rourke Silas. I opened to a page halfway through, a log entry about a hush payment. A witness paid off. My throat went dry. I flicked to the end of the page. Not everything I wrote was published. Some truths we were silenced into signing. They tried to rewrite history. Tonight, I hold the pen. The email came just after lunch, buried under headlines and spam. But the attached invoices, it stopped my breath. Vendor payments, signed in my name, diverted to Delphine's personal accounts. Her private portfolio, fattened with funds meant for the company's future. Not just betrayal. Theft. Quiet, calculated theft. I stared at the documents, reading them again, each line more brutal than the last. This wasn't about emotion anymore. This was strategy, greed. Power reveals what fear conceals. That phrase hit hard, and now I was done concealing. That evening I walked into the boardroom with the weight of truth behind me, slides loaded, witnesses prepped, faces around the table were tense, some deflecting eye contact, others leaning in. I called it out clean. Financial misconduct, deliberate redirection of funds. Joran flinched when I said his name. I pulled up the vendor statements backed by testimony. Rourke handled billing. Now checks go through shell companies. One email from Delphine herself showed her complimenting my designs, yet she publicly credited Joran. He scoffed, "This is desperation." I stared him down. Evidence doesn't beg. The room shifted. Delphine's smile broke for the first time, corners trembling. She didn't interrupt. She couldn't. The foundation cracked. The illusion started to rot. Later that night, under the dim lights of her estate's library, I found her sitting alone. No wine, no audience, just the echo of an empire slipping. I stood silent for a while before asking, "You told me once that honesty mattered. When did you stop living by that?" She looked up slowly, voice brittle. "You don't know what I carried. Everyone believed I was the genius. I had to be. Your silence made them believe I built it alone." I sat across from her. I didn't shout, just listened. "You felt invisible once, and you used that pain to make me invisible now." She nodded. No defense. Just the look of someone exhausted by their own mask. By morning, I set the final pieces in motion. I arranged live stream interviews with ex-designers, suppliers, even former clients. They spoke openly, on record, all echoing one line: "Rourke shaped this place." Trademark refilings were submitted. My name reattached to blueprints. An investigative reporter I trusted agreed to break the full story. No soft edges. Social feeds buzzed. Hashtag Rourke built. The phrase grew legs. Delphine scrambled. Her PR firm pushed a last-ditch apology tour, rebranding missteps, praising team collaboration, but never naming me. At a charity gala, she gave a carefully written speech, all polish and posture. Joran followed it up online with a post about teamwork and legacy. No mention of who drew the first line. I stood backstage watching it unfold like a stage play. I didn't flinch. I didn't interrupt. I had a different audience now. The legal system. After the gala, I wandered into my old drawing room. Dust on the shelves. Forgotten drafts rolled in tubes. Then Gannon appeared, quiet, holding something in his hand. A napkin. The same linen one from years back with the oak leaf stitched in. But this time, he'd embroidered my initials into the corner. "I fixed it," he said. I reached for it slowly, thumb brushing the thread. My throat clenched. I didn't cry, but I felt it. Return, dignity, a name restored. "You are my legacy," I whispered, and I meant every syllable. Just before midnight, the knock came. A courier, suit and tie, no expression. The envelope bore the seal of the court. Inside, order signed by the judge. Delphine had 24 hours to appeal or transfer full intellectual property rights, including designs, patents, branding, back to me. I stood by the window, looking out at the skyline we once dreamed together. The empire she tried to claim alone now teetered. It wasn't just mine again. It was visible. Validated. The morning light came in soft, no urgency behind it. For once, no tension sat on my chest. I stood in the kitchen barefoot, holding the court order in my hands again. The same document I'd read twice last night, just to be sure. It was still real. I now own 75% of the company, on record, on paper, in law. But instead of celebration, I made coffee slow. I looked at an old photo on the fridge. Me, 23, holding our first rough sketch like it was a newborn. That kid had no idea what was coming. I muttered to myself, "Winning's not about applause. It's about clarity." The mug warmed my palms. No parade, no victory lap, just peace. That's when I knew what I needed. To go back. Not to brag or revisit glory, but to walk the soil where I lost pieces of myself. I left the house. No real plan, just the address burned in memory. It had been years since I walked those sidewalks. Cracks had spread across the pavement like laugh lines on an old face. I passed the elementary school where I used to slip out early when life got too heavy. I paused at the corner bench. I'd sat there once, fists clenched after one of our first fights. Back then, I thought fighting meant it was over. I learned otherwise. Some fights just linger. A woman waved from a stoop. Took me a second, but I recognized her. Mrs. Hanley, my 8th grade English teacher. "Rourke," she called, voice cracking. "You were always quiet, but I knew you'd build something worth standing on." I smiled, not tight-lipped, not out of politeness, just real. I nodded. "Thank you for seeing me back then," she winked. "You made it loud enough now." I turned toward the oak at the far end of the park. Years ago, I'd etched a little square on the bark, my idea of a dream home. I touched the spot. "You don't always get back what was taken," I said under my breath, "but sometimes you get to rebuild from where it first cracked." My phone buzzed. Gannon. "Meet me by the pond," he said. 15 minutes later, we sat side by side on the same bench I once cried on. No big words, no grand gestures, just a folded paper in his hand. "My college essay," he said, handing it to me. The title hit me in the chest. "The Strongest Woman I Know." I looked up. I thought, he cut me off. "I watched everything, Dad. You didn't shout. You didn't quit. You stayed. That's strength." I couldn't speak right away. My throat locked. But I managed. "You don't have to be perfect to make me proud. You just have to show up. And you have." He smiled. We sat there a while longer, sun touching the tops of the trees. When I got home, a thick envelope sat in the mailbox. Her handwriting. Delphine. I opened it inside, hands steady. It wasn't an apology, not really, but it was honest. "You made peace with pain," she wrote. "I made noise with mine." She said she was stepping away from the company, relocating somewhere off the grid. "We both need peace," she ended, "but not the same one." I folded the letter gently and tucked it beside our old sketches, between the dreams we once shared and the ones I'd build alone. Weeks later, I stood inside Rourke Atelier, my name carved above the door, not out of pride, but identity. A team gathered, younger, eager, hopeful. We talked about lines, angles, and meaning. I spoke at the local community center that evening. "Scars don't weaken us," I told them. "They make us legible. They remind us we survived." After the talk, an older woman came up. "I never got architecture," she said, "but I understood you tonight." I held her hand. That to me meant more than any award. Later that week, I found myself alone in the sunroom. The light fell across my sketch pad. A simple home began to form. Porch, garden, warm light from within. Not a mansion, not a monument, just something rooted. I heard Gannon laugh in the kitchen. My son, my witness. I whispered into the silence, "Forgiveness isn't letting them off the hook. It's freeing yourself from their grip." I believed it now. I smiled, not from triumph, but from gratitude. Narration fades. I was never just someone's wife. I was always the architect of dreams, of structures, of survival.